Meeting work session for March 23rd, 2022, and we're starting at 5:35. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The second item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Missy, seconded by
Second.
John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item number 3 is a budget discussion. Before we get started, I did send you an email to let you know that we probably were going to be having a couple of guest speakers. Right now, we have Michael Skelps from the Middlefield Board of Finance. We're awaiting Jim Martinelli from Durham Board of Finance. I left him a message, so I'm hoping he makes it here, but if he doesn't, after your presentation, maybe if he shows up a little bit later, we'll have him join us. So I think we will start with your comments, if you don't mind, Mike. Thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you so much. As Lucy said, my name is Michael Skelps. I'm the new chair with all the changes in Middlefield recently of the Board of Finance. And not so much a presentation, but I do have some comments from our board as we have looked at the proposed school budget as well as the proposed municipal budget. And I have just some written comments, so if you'll indulge me. I'll get right to the point. The Middlefield Board of Finance, the entire membership of the board has strong concerns about the proposed budget for RSD13 for fiscal year 23. The proposed budget would add $1.43 million to the budget of Middlefield, an increase to the average homeowner of $424. We view the 4.6% increase in the school district as unacceptable, and we do not support the current budget proposal. So I urge you, along with the rest of my board, to take an aggressive yet prudent stance to trim the school budget before it goes to referendum. The Middlefield Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance have worked tirelessly to hold down expenses in our town while providing essential services to the community. Our town leadership constantly seeks better ways and more efficient ways to ensure public safety, public work services, community services, as well as capital investment. And for 2023, we anticipate municipal spending to be within 0.02% of the current year. We do not sense the same commitment to fiscal responsibility in this year's proposed school budget. In the past 4 years, student enrollment has dropped nearly 20%, yet the school budget has increased 5.14%. And the current increase is the highest in the records that I have that go back 8 years. And the cost per pupil has increased 27.4% during that time. And we feel that these are in stark contrast to the municipal budget of Middlefield, which is basically held flat for 8 years. Now, obviously, the lion's share of our town budget is made up of the Board of Education, the Board of Education's budget. And we recognize that we're Board of Finance, you're Board of Education. We recognize that you own the budget, you understand the budget better than we do. Yet we would like to offer a few observations. As I said before, this year's proposed school budget is the biggest increase in the past decade. And I think any increase, considering that we're in the 8th year of declining enrollment, any increase could be questioned, but certainly the largest increase in recent memory, to us, it doesn't seem that it is in the financial interest of the town. And the elephant in the room is that staffing levels have remained effectively flat for 4 years while enrollment has declined. I do not come here today to propose specific line items that we are requesting you to reduce. We think that's in your purview, that's what you're familiar with, and we're not in a position to select individual lines that we believe you should cut. However, with that being said, just a couple of points. One is that Picket Lane project is substantial. And again, I'm not an expert on the project, but what I have come to understand is that a repair project would be more in the $300,000 range, whereas there's $1.7 million proposed. And we believe that management of staffing levels and payroll is essential to align the payroll costs with declining student enrollment. I'm not suggesting a one-to-one, but it should be in the same general trend, we would think. Without substantial cost cutting of the current school budget as proposed, we expect it to receive strong opposition and likely defeat at referendum. And we feel that it's in the interest of town leadership and school district leadership that the budget be approved on the first pass. So that's the end of my written comments, but just, I think, you know, Jim Martinelli's not here yet. Durham's not taking such a big hit. Middlefield is. We recognize that is partially due to the allocation of students. So we get that. That part we can swallow, we can live with. But adding on the increase, again, the largest increase in recent memory, it's painful, and we're gonna have to sell that. We are also already digging into our unassigned fund. Our proposed budget, which is available on the Middlefield website, has us pulling out $1 million in that unassigned fund to help buy down the mill rate a little bit, make this a little bit easier to swallow. But I would just like to see the Board of Education try a little harder to get the costs down for the proposal. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Jim is on his way. I just got a voicemail from him. He got tied up with a client. I understand he will also have some comments as well. One of the things you mentioned was transitioning in the two program to one program. We've already done that, and there's really no financial savings related to that. It's just a matter of how the curriculum is taught to the students. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments based on what Mike said?
Michael, part of the increase in the budget as proposed is change in our ability to save for the future. I know that your first selectman has been on the proposal for this for a long time to say we can't put aside enough money because we can only limit 1%. So part of the 2%, regardless of what it's for, part of that increase is really the finance officer, basically proposing that there's a, if we can save 2% in our capital reserve, we could save 2%.
Yep.
And that adds almost what, 3% to the total budget, Kim?
1%, 1% more
So,
than what we normally do.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the first things that has been looked at is, if we save for future capital, how do we do that?
Right. No, I understand that. That's been brought up to my attention. And like I said, and look, wherever this goes, the people will decide. And at the first opportunity I had to meet you, Dr. Shook, at a teleconference last year, one of the very first comments I made to you was that, and we all know this, I'm just reiterating the obvious, that the budget will face pressure at referendum if it's headed north. And so I just think that's what we're seeing. The people will ultimately decide. But I would be remiss if I did not raise my concerns as well as my colleagues. And I represent 4,400 people in Middlefield, and so I'm trying to make sure it's responsible for them too. You know, I always, and I'm speaking from the heart, I always get a little nervous about saying anything about the school district, about the finances, because it's like, well, you hate kids and you hate the schools, and that's not it at all. But we, you know, I think another thing I might have told Doug when I first met him is that I'm a product of public schools. My high school had remarkable similarities to Coggins-Shaw, and it was just a wonderful time of my life, and I always felt like I got a very good education. I had about 100 kids in my graduating class, and my teachers made a big difference in my life. And so I want to, you know, I don't want you to think that I want you guys to slash and burn, not that you would, but that's not my suggestion. But are there things that, you know, can be tightened up a little more? So I'm probably starting to go around in circles now, but
No,
I hope you understand.
I think you make a lot of really good points. We also want to feel that way. You know, we feel the same way the Board of Finance does. We don't want people to think we don't care about the schools or we don't care about, you know, certain things. For me, what it does come down to, so I don't know how the stance on the Board of Finance feels, but we have 5 buildings that we now have to budget out for. Does the Middlefield Board of Finance support Lyman's closure?
Well,
because this is where our savings comes down to.
Sure.
And I haven't seen that, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and it's frustrating all around. There's emotions everywhere, but that cost savings is so big. And
I
to lower
understand.
that per pupil is so important, and I haven't seen enough support from there, if that's where it is or not.
Again, in Middlefield, probably much more so than Durham, the John Lyman issue is very contentious. We took a position prior, well, maybe I should stop short of calling it a position. We put out information prior to the referendum, and we said that we documented or tried to articulate what the actual savings was. You know, is there a savings to the town? Yes. And I don't have my notes in front of me on that, but you know, what was the average savings to a Middlefield homeowner, which I think was a few $100s. And you know, you guys are probably all thinking a lot about John Lyman these days. I'm not really here to talk about John Lyman because it's a separate issue, but we recognize, the Board of Finance recognized and publicly stated that there is a cost savings associated with it. Because it's such an emotional issue and there are so many non-financial considerations, I personally have stopped short of going out there publicly and saying, let's close John Lyman because it's going to save the town money, because there are other factors. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it definitely does. And I think, you know, I looked at what you had said and I read it a little bit, and I'd like to say, you know, people have said, oh, well, we should cut staff. We should go through and cut staff. It's hard to know what we're gonna do with staff when we don't know what we're yet doing with the building. We've got a new program coming in. We don't yet know what that program is gonna entail for staffing, at least from my perspective, for this year. So it is hard. I know that there have been some ideas thrown around, and I'm sure, you know, Lucy and Kim can talk about it too. But we wanna get to the same goal. It's hard for everybody.
For those that have kind of kept track of referendums and going back 2 decades now, and I don't remember every one, but there were quite a few years where it was contentious. It went more than 1 vote, 2 and 3 times. Bob, you can probably help me with that. But do we all agree that getting it right the first time, as you suggest, probably is the best route? Because if the first one doesn't pass, now the red light's on. Now the red flag is on. Everybody's going to come out and say, darn it, it was too high at first. I'm going to say it's too high the second time. Is that kind of your philosophy? Like, we need to get it right the first time?
Look, it saves money to not have to go to referendum again. It saves headache. It gives more certainty going forward. You know, I don't feel so much that if they voted it down once, they're going to automatically vote it down again. And maybe that's true for some people, but I'm just more of, do we want that going back to referendum again and again. It'd be nice to get that certainty as soon as possible. I mean, it's a process, right? And the process will work one way or the other at the end. But I think the best approach would be, in an ideal world, that we're gonna get this right the first time.
So are you looking for a 0% increase?
That's that's probably not gonna happen.
Well, it's not.
So,
So.
but, I wouldn't,
I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but it's like, Kim's worked really, really hard on
Yeah.
this budget, and I just want everyone to know that. And, I've been on the board for 3 years, but I've sat through a lot of these budget meetings, and like, I know we've tried to keep it flat, and I almost think that was not a good thing to do, because now we've set that precedence that we've done it for too long. And 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when we saved $1 million on benefits, like, I was the first one to say, it's gonna kick us in the butt, and it's kicking us in the butt right now, excuse my language, but like, I understand it's a lot of money, but just look at the price of everything. Go to the grocery store, go to the gas station. Like, these are our kids and this is their education. So I kind of echo what Lindsay's saying, and I don't wanna get into the John Lyman thing, cause that's not even gonna affect next year's budget, even if John Lyman closes, it's not gonna close next year, but we've been kicking the can with capital improvement for way too long. And I came into this meeting saying, if we don't save 2% in the budget, I'm voting no. Because I think that's something we have to start to do. Because we haven't been being financially responsible. If the board was financially responsible, we would not have been in a situation with John Lyman needing $7 million worth of work. So that's kind of where I'm at before I lose my voice from my allergies. But I mean, that's just, I don't think it's practical nor possible to have a 0%. I just don't.
And I think looking at neighboring towns, and we had gone through a lot of them, anywhere ranging from like
They're all
low 3%
increasing.
to 9%, between inflation and
Other school districts. going
Yeah,
up.
I think that's a good point, Lindsay, and I think it was Michael's as well. I think it's the overall increase, which is, from what I've seen, and I think what Kim's seen from her colleagues, we're pretty much right in line there, but it's the way that in this particular cycle, because of the population shift of our learners, it's kind of disproportionately hitting Middlefield in this cycle. So I think that's our dilemma. But I appreciate that you shared that with us, because I think it's a really
what's
good
that
point.
number share change? You said that.
I'm sorry?
What was that number that you
Middlefield's
had?
picking up 1.3 million, we're 300,000 roughly.
I've always disliked that, the optics of the cost per student thing. It's not a valid measurement, it really isn't. It's just purely based on enrollment, and we know that's going against us. My worry is if things that we do affect the quality of education, and I believe you can cut things without affecting quality, I firmly believe that. But if you have people now talking that the school district is going downhill, that number's only gonna get worse, meaning, wow, now it's up to 30,000 per student because we have even less enrollment from people. They're always gonna leave to go to Xavier, we know that. We know they're gonna leave to go to the trade schools. But our sort of goal here also is to say, let's maintain what we have as much as we can as far as educational integrity, so we don't keep having this downward slope of losing students. That is our biggest worry, I think, in a lot of respects. And obviously the Lyman issue, without going into it, is hurting that. It's like a really difficult situation. This is the worst probably in our generation for budgets.
I think we have Jim here now. Are you ready to give us a Durham's perspective on the budget?
Come on, Jim, you got it. Well, I'm trying to hook on to the budget, but let me start with, what is the goal of tonight of this workshop?
We are actually going to be going through the budget and making decisions as to whether or not we're going to approve it as is, or perhaps recommend some reductions in the budget, and we wanted to get some feedback from both of the communities to see. So this way it's out there, it's out in public, and the entire board has an opportunity to respond to it as well.
Well, obviously, it's a bigger bite for Middlefield than it is for
Right.
Durham. I mean, if, later we're gonna entertain suggestions of cuts, you know, a few people have approached me with some comments they'd like to share. But I mean, that's only if we're headed in that direction. I mean, are we trying to?
Well, they certainly did already, so I'm sure it's fine.
I'm sorry, 'cause
No, I'm just saying,
was-
that's what I'm saying, they've already done that, so they've already presented some of their suggestions, so I would say you can go ahead and do the same.
Yep.
Oh, now?
Or if he
Mhm.
wants, or if he
Okay.
wants to hear it, maybe
Um,
I'll say it first.
Okay, I'm trying to get on the Wi-Fi, but that's all right.
You wanna help him, John?
Okay.
One of the things is it's a big nickel to pave that road. It's
The
a
paved
large cost to pave
Oh.
Pickett Lane. And, you know, right now, I know it's in tough shape, but, I had a couple people mention that, you know, if you pave it and it's nice and smooth, people are gonna drive faster on it. I know I will. Well, and you know, you got a lot of
Human
students.
nature.
You got a lot of students on that road, and you've got a lot of people with dogs, walking dogs, and kids, and I'm sure I'm not gonna be the only one driving a little faster on that road if it's paved. I mean, is that?
We have
is
a
that-
resident trooper to handle that.
Does a resident trooper to handle that?
We have a
I've
resident
wanted
trooper.
speed bumps for years
All
on
right,
that road.
all right.
This is like-
Well, I just, you know, I'm thinking reliability, that's all. Can that be postponed a year, delayed a year?
So I don't know if you know, but that's actually only part of the savings for the paving. It's not the entire paving project in this one budget year. So it's,
It
what
won't
was
be
it,
done
Kim,
till
in
next summer.
3 years, right?
Hopefully,
Thank
it was suggested or proposed to be saved at $582,000 for this. The estimate that we got to do it absolutely soup to nuts, rebuild it, was 1.7. It was never stated we were gonna absolutely do it that way. That was a quote of giving me the direction that I needed to start saving for that. So even if that is more than a repair, you still need to budget for the repair. So it's not gonna move the number, that I need to save for repairs.
Okay, I'm just bringing up
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
No,
We
that's
appreciate it.
what you're here for.
what I've heard, you know.
Yep.
Another issue is the bathrooms for the night football.
The field house. The field house.
How many night football games do you anticipate?
There's no
You're gonna-
bathrooms in the budget. That's not part of
Oh,
the.
I thought, well, what do we do?
There's a building.
There's a building.
There's no bathrooms.
And that's towards the night football,
I
concept?
would say it'd be
For
for
all
every,
No,
all sports.
The building
All
is,
sports?
yeah, the
Right,
building is.
there's no bathrooms in that budget?
No.
Nope.
Okay,
It's just a shell of a building, and eventually, with the
Right.
hope that our boosters would be able to fund, some of the inside work.
I thought there was an agreement that you couldn't have night football until
I know
you
what you're
built the
talking about.
We can't have
bathrooms.
This has
the
nothing to do with.
permanent lights unless we have
Yeah,
that
it's the
built.
permanent
That's not
lights of the
true?
field,
Correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
it just doesn't have anything to do with this budget. We're not proposing lights for the field, at
This is a
time.
structure to go over that.
Slab.
Cement
Slab.
pad, that cement pad that's
That's
there,
all.
that's been there for
In order to
10 years.
preserve what is currently there.
Okay. Somebody else mentioned, we are losing students every year. How many, it couldn't have been 150, I heard a number of 150, it wasn't, that's not
I don't think so.
Around 80.
accurate, is it?
Between 70 and 80.
Okay, all right. Somebody asked, can you give me a number as to how many more students we need to lose before you're gonna consider reduced staffing?
We've reduced staffing almost every year. We have
We
not
have.
proposed any in this particular budget yet.
I didn't know if you had those numbers because Mike had raised the issue about there was very little staffing that's been reduced, but we have reduced staffing over
3
the
last
last
year.
5 years. Three just last year. And I know almost every other year we've reduced at least one or two.
Was that figure 97.5% I saw in the,
That is our vacancy factor in our salaries.
okay.
That's not related to staff reductions.
Okay, all right, well, obviously I'm getting a lot of misinformation, you know, from, you know, some of the public comments, that's all. Maybe, I wanna look at the budget before I make any other comments. Thank you for putting me in.
My pleasure.
don't know, Jim is the new chair for the Board of Finance, and he's new to the Board of Finance, so.
But
he's-
we have a lot of new,
Congratulations.
Yeah.
since November, everything's been very new for
You
a
too,
lot of
right?
people, a lot of changes, and all. I think one of the things, while Jim is looking over the budget, if that's okay, if you wanted a few minutes to do that.
Please.
Kim, if you could just go over the items that are actually driving the increases in this particular budget,
So,
basic.
I can do that, I have the detail, but if you want a sort of a higher level, instead of getting into the weeds, really out of the
Right.
4.56, 2% of the 4.56 is educational student-related increases. So that's inflation, that's maybe a new skeleton in the AP class that they needed because theirs is broken and missing parts. The remaining 2.56 is capital and the field house. So when you say the budget's up 4.56, technically it is, but school direct student spending is only up 2. So the other 2% capital savings, that's a savings. That's not being spent, that's being saved for other things. So if you remove that, then you're up at a 2.56, and the field house represents a 0.5. So, you know, the other 2% is, we have an increase in buildings and grounds, supplies have gone through the roof. We have a couple of small things that we need to buy in terms of a skeleton. We have some new textbooks for, I think, AP geometry. We have, and I have it all here. I can hit on a couple of highlights. We have the phone system that is expiring, that we have to pay for a new phone system. We're gonna get all VoIP, new headsets, and actually a decrease in what it was. However, it didn't hit last year's budget because it was prepaid, so now it's coming due, so that represents an increase. Everybody's insurance goes up. Our insurance, not our health insurance, but our property insurance and our automobile insurance, that went up. Like I said, the supplies, we have HVAC filters that we are getting a better filter, and we're running our systems a lot longer because of COVID, so we're having to replace them more often. Last year, we had the coronavirus relief fund grant, $125,000 that we used to offset for supplies. We don't have that this year. So that represents an increase. So we're not really actually spending any more money in supplies, we just have to pay for it out of the district funds. This year, we don't have the grant. And then under equipment, we have a replacement installation of basketball hoops at Brewster, a new microphone system at Brewster so that they can have assemblies, they don't have microphones. Right now, I think they have one that they have to share. And we're starting a replacement cycle of our tech ed equipment, which are, some are 30 years old, some are 60 years old, so that's a new planer for them, $4,000. So, you know, that stuff adds up, but when you add it up, it's 2%. So if it's the 4.56 that's troubling, really we can narrow it down to 2 areas, capital and equipment.
I believe there was also a major increase in the health insurance.
Health insurance increased by 22%. However, looking at the state partnership plan, we are able to reduce that significantly, and maybe only result in maybe an 8%, but also reduce our health savings account contributions because now we're at HDHP. So that's baked into this budget. Should we not switch to the partnership plan, this budget will probably have to go up another 4%. So that's the assumption that we're switching.
And that health insurance cost benefits, that's changed into that 4.56, right?
Yes.
Yes, that
That's
assumes
from the
we are
4.9 to
going to
4.6.
the, yes,
Okay.
Going to the 8%?
Gotcha.
yes.
Yeah, and it's been talked about a lot tonight. I know I sent you guys an email if you've read that, but I think it is important that everybody understand, if they don't, that this set aside for capital, we proposed all of the amount that the state is allowing us to do. It had been at 1%, we're proposing it to. We don't have to do that. If you're looking for an easy way to bring the budget down, it's an easy target because it's a long-term budgeting strategy, one that Kim and I both endorse, and I believe since I've been here, that's what I've heard from the previous board and the current board, that you all agree that that's a best practice to actually set cash aside as we are able, so that we're not so dependent on bonding, and that we're not caught in situations where, in a particular budget year, we have this massive capital expenditure or need. But, that does add to the budget. And so I think, from the way that I looked at it and in supporting Kim in this recommendation is, we already kind of had a commitment at 1%. I think that was pretty solid. It had been happening for how many years? Since you've been here?
Almost.
So maybe even longer. We thought we should be at 2. If you guys aren't comfortable with that, we can go back to 1, or we could go somewhere in between if you're looking for some savings. I just point out, it's a budgeting strategy. Everything that we have to do, we have to do. So it's a matter of, are we gonna set aside now and kind of look down the road, or are we gonna say this budget is high, so we're not gonna do it? When do we get there? So, I just think we don't have a lot of tools in the toolbox that I'm aware of that allow us as a district to actually set money aside for long-term projects, and I think it's something we need to seriously consider.
Jim, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I'm looking at the superintendent's 2022-2023 budget, current expenditure per pupil, and it looks like 2021 state average was 20,007, average for regional schools was 23,500, DRCC average was 21,300, and District 13 was 24,500. And it's projected for 21-22 to be almost 25,000. And 22-23, 26,100 per pupil, and we have less pupils. Somebody made a comment about that. They thought that was a little high.
No, I think a way to, only real smart way to reduce our budget is to reduce our buildings. So, I know I just said it before, but if we reduce our buildings from 5 buildings down to 4 buildings that we can maintain well and effectively, we can lower that significantly, between an admin, and I think there's how many in that, staffing arrangement if when we lose a building?
1 admin.
Yeah, so and the cost savings, $1.5 million a year. So as emotional as it is, for me, I have more emotion to worry about our district in the long term if we can't fund 5 buildings. So that would significantly come down with the per pupil.
And even though it doesn't affect the budget this year, I think it is worth kind of touching base on as well. I mean, it's 1.5 with our older figures. It could be more now because salaries have gone up and other expenses have gone up with regard to the school. But that's why the board voted, 2 different boards, because we've had a change to close John Lyman School. Knowing full well that the emotional attachment, because I'm from Middlefield, so I've heard it, but you've got people on both sides to the school, but it really is a significant cost. I think it's over $5 million just to keep the entire school open, but if we close it, obviously you're gonna keep most of the staff, the teachers, and all, you're gonna eliminate some, so you have approximately $1.5 million that you're saving, and it's not just for 1 year, it's for every year, beyond that. So, that's the reason why the board voted, and I voted the way we did. Because if we look at our budget and we look at what makes sense, it makes sense. We already closed Corn, and, I mean, we have 5 buildings for 1,344 students, and we really don't need the 5 buildings. So that's one piece, but that wouldn't happen until next year. I didn't know, I don't wanna cut you short. I wanna make sure that you have a chance if there's something else you wanted to add.
Budget salaries at 97.5%. Someone's made a comment is that older people retiring and new people coming in, and that's the salary difference in the spread between the senior people getting?
I can speak to that. So essentially what that is, it's not just the older people retired, that could be part of that. A higher salary teacher may retire and replace it a lower salary, but it's also other positions within the district that may take a little while to fill. So they may go vacant for a little while, they may be a teacher out on leave that is an unpaid leave. So there's different factors, it's not just that. And this has been something that wasn't, I don't believe was done in the past. When I came on board, I kind of understood that, and it was really practiced, always budget at 100%. Maybe Bobby Martino can agree with that or not, but we agreed that we thought that
Should not be.
the vacancy factor is very important, and that does play into it. So we've been doing that since I came on board.
Which wasn't, I don't believe it was the case in the past.
The practice in the past was that you would budget 100% of the salaries and 100% of the substitutes
For the
to
staffing,
cover
right.
the salary when it was there. And that was not appropriate. We then implemented a vacancy factor, and over the years, it's changed a little bit, but it's based on, Kim does an analysis of what the actual number is relative to the budget, and so you basically take it out. Since salary is the largest line item in the budget, it's probably the one where a vacancy factor plays the most role.
And I believe, and I'm not sure you mentioned this, I believe that with 100%, there was a relatively substantial amount that was left over at the end of the year?
Well, what would happen each year is you'd end up with a surplus in the salary line item of anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million, which is why it was like, you're budgeting it every year, you know you're not gonna spend it because people are gonna quit, die, retire, someone's gonna go out on leave, medical leave, maternity leave, whatever, and you know you're not gonna spend the entire line item. So you should not budget the whole line item.
I agree.
And that was the reason why the
Kim's
suggestion came.
predecessor said that it's unadvisable to do that, but when we had other people take a look at it, that said, no, it's a quite common practice to put in a vacancy factor, we adopted it, and that's when the board took it on.
The other piece is if we look at the capital and how much it's funded, right now, for the last few years, we have funded it up to the 1%, pretty close to the 1%. I think prior to that, I don't believe the 1%, whole 1% was being put in there.
I don't believe
No,
it was.
so when, I believe that's within the last 6 years, we've made it a point, and I'm gonna give Bob credit for that too, for pushing, that we made it a point to, if we could do 1%, why are we not doing 1%? And that's what we were
Yeah,
doing.
I've always maintained that the 1% was not enough, and that was
Right.
by state statute. And that what the district probably needs is a number closer between maybe up to 4% if they actually wanted to never go to referendum. Okay?
Right.
That's
Except we
kind
can't
of
do
where
that.
it would need to be. So with the fact that the legislature has revised it to 2%, I am in favor of the full 2% being budgeted. I'm not necessarily in favor of it being allocated to a road. I'd rather see all of the other items that we have prioritized that, you know, like, because if you recall, this past summer, we had a chiller at the high school fail. And the school district did not have money in reserves to replace the chiller. And all of the ARP funding went to replacing those chillers. I would rather see the money allocated towards mechanical structures within the school district or other prioritized items. If I were working on the budget, that's how I would do it.
Jim?
Somebody asked me, and I couldn't answer this question, I know it's 2023, 24, but begin implementing reimagine education. I couldn't answer there. I didn't know what that was, so I couldn't answer
How
that.
much time do you have?
Pardon me?
How much time do you have? Now, that was part of the budget proposal, and who knows if we'll be ready to launch at that point, but there's a movement afoot that we're trying to, think about if we were able to start from scratch and create an education system based on what we know the world of work is like for our learners when they graduate, what would it look like? And then backwards map from what we'd like that to be to where we are. And so we can't project what that will look like, but based on the work that we've done in the community and with the board, the point of that was this budget does not reflect any of that work. We're still in the planning stages, but it could look very different, and it dovetails back, I hate to keep bringing it up, to the lineman issue too, because if we don't know what facilities we're gonna operate, it's very difficult to reimagine what school's gonna look like if you don't know if it's gonna be on 4 campuses or 5, and so that's, I could say a lot more about that, but I don't think that's what everyone wants to hear tonight, but that's, we can talk offline if you want.
And lastly, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but if we go with the health insurance with the state, that's a 3-year commitment.
Right.
Yeah, okay,
We
you know
know.
that, okay.
Yep.
All right.
And the other thing that saved us the last couple of years is the fund balance, which we don't have nearly as much.
Yeah, not last year, but previous years,
Okay.
yes.
Last
And
year
then we
didn't.
had a practice of, during COVID, not fully expending the budget due to whether they were canceled field trips or we had some transportation funding that we didn't because we were home, we were remote, and we had a bit surplus that we then applied to the next year's budget to balance it out. So, the increases were not there because we had those funds.
Right. And the unions have to agree to the, new insurance?
Well, they have to recognize that it's, equivalent or better, which it is. So, you know, they can, object to it, but then it would go to an arbitrator, but I don't know that it would go that far. But yeah, we do have to run it.
And I don't wanna speak for Craig or the teacher union or any other union, but in my conversations with him, this is a plan they've been wanting for years because they've talked to colleagues in other districts who have it. This is a very rich PPO plan, which is very different than the high deductible HSA plan that we currently have. And one of the things I've learned in looking into this, and Kim as well, is what the state has baked into this is a requirement, maybe you guys know all this, I didn't, a requirement for anyone covered, including employees and dependents that were covered, for completing all their routine visits, not just to medical, but to dental, and at different age spans, different things are required, you know, more for people at my end of the spectrum than for young people, obviously. And if you don't do those things, you can still be in the plan, but a different deductible is applied, and a significant increase, I think it's like over $100 a month or something, don't quote me on that, you can go to their website, but it's enough of a disparity that I think it incentivizes everyone, and for some conditions, I think hypertension is one of them, and there's others that they've identified, you have absolutely no copays for any office visits associated with them. They want people to do their wellness visits, and they're financially incentivizing people to get the treatment they need. And so I think it has a lot of almost like wellness elements baked into it for those that subscribe. All of our employees don't take the insurance, but I think as a practical matter, even though I love the plan and I think our unions are gonna feel the same way, it's 22% versus 8%. So I think even on the taking the benefit side of it out of it, because they have their cost share in part of this, I haven't heard any employee that's opposed to this. And I think we would have heard by now because we've been putting this out there for like over a month now.
We have to do formal meetings. and-
Right. We have to do those. And don't they already have their person
Yes, we have
doing
more
that
people
validation
collecting
piece? Because
information.
again, they don't have to technically approve, it's not like they gotta take a vote. They've gotta certify?
They, lack of a response indicates acceptance. If they don't accept it, they need to reply, and then we take it from there.
But the
Yeah.
contract basically says that they're not losing benefits
Right.
to go to this plan, and our preliminary analysis is it's just the opposite, it's actually a much richer plan.
And you may ask why, if it's a richer plan, why we didn't go in the past. And it's simple, is because we had good rates with Connecticut or with Aetna prior to that. And the fear with going to the Connecticut Partnership Plan was all the people with high loss claim ratios are joining and the rates are gonna go up. Guess who's doing that this year? So we're joining this plan at a very high loss claim ratio. We're gonna be part of the people that drive the rates up. So in the next 2 years, I don't know if I'm gonna be sitting here next year saying, oh, well, the state plan's up to 22. I don't know that. But that's a risk we take joining the 3-year, but that's.
So there's no
the budget.
cap on the increase?
The state has not gone up over 8% yet, so, but I don't believe there might be something worked in there. I really don't know the exact answer on that, but,
Also, when we looked at it 2 years ago, there was only about 6 towns that were members, so it was just getting off the ground. And
it's very popular now.
It was being sold by the state controller, and we were quite sure that there
And if our employees don't, if they choose not to take the insurance, do they get incentivized, like,
Monetarily, no, they do not.
so you don't take it, you don't get paid to not take it?
So Kim, if I understand correctly, you built in 8% into the budget, cause I was hearing 17% before, but
It was
it was
22, so that's
8%.
what that 4 point.
Yeah, 22 is what it went up, but I thought, I don't know where the 17 came from.
I didn't just do a blanket percentage. I went through person by person and applied the 8% state increase based on what the state rate was last year. So it's going up 8% in its own plan, but where we sat with our payment was a different rate than what the state was. So Tippy went through each person and we brought that, so this is how we came to the number. So when I say 8%, that's how much the state plan went up, but with us going back down, we may not even have realized an 8%. There's actually was a little negative in the benefits, you'll see a -2, because we had a big savings in our insurance.
Well, and the other savings that Kim's mentioned a few times, but I think it bears repeating, is we have those contributions into those health savings accounts. And you don't have a health savings account with the PPO plan, you can't. So, and the good news for our employees is the money they have in their health savings accounts, they get to keep forever, and they can apply that to co-pays or, buying glasses or whatever they need to. So they're still bringing that benefit with them, but it alleviates the board of the burden of making those deposits into those accounts, and that accounts for a substantial part of that savings as well.
Okay. Anything else, Jim?
Well, I'm
I
glad
just
to
wanna-
see
Yeah,
on the
Jim's
debt
almost done.
service that's diminishing. Is Lyman factored into that, or no, nothing to do with
No.
Lyman? It's just gonna diminish
It actually diminished just because we had some debt retiring, but we did have a 6.9 million bonding in 2018 that's been kind of held off. Some of the projects were held off because we had an energy project. So we didn't issue or sell those bonds yet. We're going to be. So we're gonna be actually increasing our debt service for a little bit, and then in 25, we fall down.
Yeah, it
We
looks-
retire considerable debt in
It looks
25.
great then after that.
What is it,
And-
what's the 25 number that comes down on that debt service? Do you have it right there?
I
I'll get it
don't, I'm
later.
sorry.
Yeah, I had it earlier.
And lastly, budget history per pupil expenditures since 2015. Gross budgets increased 3.2%, pupil expenses have increased 28%. Can you explain why the difference in, obviously there's more.
Can you say it again? I didn't understand the question.
Gross budget has increased since 2015, 3.2%.
Yeah.
Pupil expenses have increased 28%.
Okay, declining enrollment.
Declining enrollment.
That's the denominator, and so as the denominator, it's a formula that the state does. And as the denominator gets smaller, your numerator stays high. If you didn't reduce your spending, you get a larger per pupil expenditure. It takes a significant cost cut to move that number down with the declining enrollment.
Especially with inflation and our contracts with our bargaining units having increases generally built into, just about every year. There's gonna be a fixed cost increase kind of out of the gate. So again, the way to really move that number is through staff reductions, and the easiest way to make staff reductions is by consolidating schools. I know people don't wanna hear that, but that's it.
It takes millions of dollars of cuts to move it any significantly.
Millions of dollars, okay. Thank you, appreciate Mike and Jim, appreciate your comments, and you're welcome to stay and listen into the conversation and
Okay.
see where we end up.
Thank you
Thank
for,
you.
thank you for
Appreciate it.
having me and allowing me to
Thank you.
express
Thank you.
opinions of my board.
Before we begin our own discussions, I think as we look at this budget, for 5 years, we had relatively low, if almost zero. At one point, I believe we had a zero increase. And as far as a zero increase, a zero budget, as far as the budget is concerned, I think there's no question that this year, the budget's gonna have to go up. I mean, you can't keep running a school, and with all the issues that Kim mentioned, and expect it to stay at 0 or even, you know, a negative number, which we've had in the past. So, that being said, we then need to look at, well, how much should it go up? And, you know, I personally, as I look at, you know, a 4.56, and you look at the community and hopefully getting a positive vote to pass the budget, I personally feel that the 4.56 is a bit excessive. We talk about some of the issues, staffing. We had decided as a group not to make any changes in staffing this year because we're still up in the air with the schools, whether we're gonna have 5 schools or 4 schools, and so that is kind of being held off at this point in time. And I know that the administration is very much aware of the staffing student ratio, how student population is going down, so I'm sure if there's any attritions and or vacancies, that they will obviously do their best to see how they can use staffing within the schools or out of the schools, because you've got certification issues that come into play very heavily with teaching, and you don't know which positions are gonna be left open. And I know they're very much aware of that. So, you know, they're gonna be very frugal in how staff is replaced in you know, for the year. But taking a look at the capital, and I know we've heard a lot of different things. We have heard some issues cutting the capital, we have heard issues of, no, we can do more, let's do more. And while I have always been in agreement that you need to maximize your capital, we're looking at going up from 1% up to 2%, which is a big jump for 1 year, and it really does affect how much the budget itself is going up, putting a full 1%. So, you know, my feeling is, I think we could possibly look at that capital, and while it should be increased, maybe it doesn't need to go up the entire 1%. One of the largest items in the capital is the Picket Lane paving, and so that even if that capital is cut a little bit, it's not really affecting something that needs to be done right away, or is even going to be done this year. So, that's all I'm gonna put out right now for some of my thoughts, and I don't know if Lindsay wanted to say something more.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to capital versus equipment, I don't think we can even discuss equipment. Everything that Kim said, I think, I personally, I can't see us taking out. When it comes to capital, if we go to that proposed capital responsibilities, we've got that Picket Lane at 582. And depending on reductions, I mean, there are some different ways to do it, and I know how much trust we put in Kim, and she does such an amazing job. I would like to see where everyone stands on how much of a reduction we'd like to see, and maybe see how Kim can make that happen. By looking at other towns, you know, personally, I'd like to see us somewhere around 3.7, and not 4.56. Whether we pull that out of Picket Lane, we could do that.
I just wanna reiterate what Doug sent us earlier, is I feel like everyone's focusing on Picket Lane, and even if we're not saving for Picket Lane, we need to save for something else, because the other elephant in the room is that we're keeping John Lyman open next year no matter what. If something fails in that building, there's no savings for that, none. And we already know that a lot of the stuff there, they don't make parts for anymore, so we're kinda out of luck if something breaks. So, I support with what you're saying, that it's a big number, but
the problem with capital is you have to designate it to a specific project.
right, and I think that's fine, and if people are gonna obsess over Picket Lane, then, but the thing is, we got 2 schools that connect to that road, and there's wants and there's needs, and I think that that's a need, not a want. Capital is needs, and even if we're not gonna spend it on Picket Lane, we need to save for something else. This board, not this board, but the board in general, every time they make cuts, it's always on capital, and then that is why we are in the position we are in with Lyman. And I've already said that, but I'm saying it again because it is true. So,
I think that option still allows us to start savings at a certain amount with still having respect for how much that budget's increasing with
so what do you wanna
inflation.
drop it to, 1%?
I'd like to drop it to 1.3, and that would lower that picket lane, that would still be leaving us with 507,500 in that option, for capital.
And technically, we're
Savings.
not cutting capital because we were only putting in 1% before.
So
We're actually increasing
you're
because
still
we're going up to 1.3.
You are, but what we were saving was never it was never enough.
Well, we saved the maximum that we were allowed to.
Right.
My hope would be to put the full 2 in next year, with the cost savings of, staffing cuts or hopefully a building closure.
Yep.
Kim, if we have something in the capital, say we have money aside for the paving project and the furnace goes at Lyman, technically, we can pull that money from the capital to fix the furnace, correct?
So, yes and no. It would have to be by a board vote, but really it's kind of tight in the sense that it says you can only redirect that if the project can't be done. So
Okay.
like what we did with the, warning track, we're like, yeah, we're not gonna do that, so we were able to direct those funds over. What, if you're worried about being able to do that, what we can do is we can put more money into the unanticipated maintenance account, less into Picket Lane, and then at the end of the year, board votes easy, let's move that into Picket Lane.
And that's currently at 50,000, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that
And
still
that-
part of the 2% though?
Yes.
It is, yes,
That's-
yes.
So that's.
So you would raise that to 75 or 100 or whatever you're comfortable with, take that out of the paving. If there's money left in that account at the end of the year, because you have the entire year to put money in the capital reserve, you don't have to just do it now. You can take any surplus at the end of the year by board vote and just put it into Picket Lane, if that's where you decide to put it. Or you can allocate it amongst anything that's in there. So if that feels more comfortable, that can be done too. You're still saving and we can just direct it at the end of the year, then we have, in case something happens during the year.
What's in the general building maintenance capital, or is that unanticipated?
That's the unanticipated,
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay,
and
I wasn't
we-
sure if it
She's
was
talking about
worded
from
differently
here
years before.
to-
Okay.
From here
Yeah.
to
And that's
here.
for those things like a chiller going that we
So
didn't save
Gotcha.
for.
if you
And you know, that's
Yeah.
that's low,
Picket
50
Lane.
goes quick,
Yeah.
so.
And I know it's
Say
stating the
furnace,
obvious,
we can use that
but
money, and then if we don't,
if we get to a point where we can fund this thing well,
Right.
that can go.
But everyone's.
our unanticipated line can go way down,
I would-
because we're gonna get ahead of things, and we're not gonna worry the things, I'm sorry.
I just
Jason,
don't think-
Jake. Sorry. Go ahead.
Can you repeat that? Well, it's philosophically, I mean, it's not any different than like a household budget or whatever. If this thing can at some point get funded well enough, we're kind of proactive with a replacement cycle, and we're not waiting for things. And so eventually you bring down the need to really have a well-funded, unanticipated. But in my experience, not just here, but in other districts I've worked where we have older buildings, unanticipated sometimes has to be higher, because it's almost like the cost of not savings. And so, I think, our position, and I don't wanna speak for Kim, but is, to your questions, is if there could be a commitment to increasing this, that's gonna be good, because whether it has to sit in the unanticipated line or actually be designated for a project, it's showing a commitment to our buildings and the fact that they're old and they're going to need system replacements
And
and things
the
like
By
that.
Anticipated.
transferring.
I
That's
think
what
it
you're
started
saying,
at
Deb?
30 when I was here.
By transferring.
We
from
actually
here.
bumped it up to 80, and because we hadn't done any work, then when we did the energy project, we got a lot of new equipment, so I brought it back down to 50, so I am kind of stepping back a bit. But I wanna make this is unanticipated, don't think we don't budget for anticipated repairs, roof repairs, we do put a little bit carpentry, we do all that. This is something that you just don't see coming.
And those are in a different area.
Those are all under,
Yeah, that's-
yeah,
that's
buildings
the
and
general-
grounds,
'Cause those are have
purchase
their own
services,
maintenance.
those are
Yeah.
not in capital, yes.
So if money were moved into the unanticipated, what happens at the end of the year if it's not,
We can move it
Spend.
into any of the other categories, the board can tell me where to move it.
can it also go into the fund balance?
It
as
cannot
well?
go back to the general fund once
Can't
it's
go
in
back
there.
to the general
No.
fund, so it has to go
Yes,
somewhere,
yes.
okay.
Which doesn't.
Interesting idea, it still keeps the budget at a 4.56% increase. So I guess the question, right,
Oh.
yeah, if you're moving it some from here to here, it still keeps the budget at the same increase. doesn't change. It's only if you take it out that you lower. You understand what I'm saying?
Right, I was
Yeah.
saying we were lowering.
We were talking about lowering, but if it were moved, if some of this was moved up to here, to the unanticipated, it still keeps the budget at 4.56. So then the question becomes, are we comfortable going to the public with 4.56%?
No.
And, you know, that's something that you have to decide. If we cut, if we move it, if we move some funds from one item, from Picket Lane up to the unanticipated.
But we
Okay,
can
so
cut,
everything else stays the same, we just move number of figures to different columns.
No, the way I saw it is that we would reduce Picket Lane down to three fifty from the
Then that
582.
money goes here.
No, and then from that 350, we would move some money up to unanticipated building and equipment
Okay.
reserve.
Okay,
So we
then
would
that
be
would drop a
lowering
little
to
bit.
that, lowering by 1.3 or whatever amount.
We'd be lowering the 2% down to 1.3.
Yes.
So we're still saving more than the 1% that was allowed previously.
Right.
So in other words, you're saying, so the Picket Lane item would be 350, and some of that would go up to the unanticipated.
So essentially lower Picket Lane down to 250 and move 100,000 up to the
Yeah,
unanticipated.
okay, well, that's a possibility too. I'm not sure what the percentages would be, and that would lower the, I don't know how much it would lower the 4.56.
So if I could just ask for clarification, you said reduce
1.3?
the 582
Yep.
down to
350.
350.
Mhm.
So that gives us 282, 232.5, and then out of that, you said move how much to?
I just threw out a
Say
random
100.
number.
And then move
Say
how much
100.
up to unanticipated maintenance?
Say
50,000.
100.
So now you're
100?
down to 182.5.
If it's left over, we can still roll it over, so it doesn't really harm it if you do 100.
So it's,
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, that's just giving us the, in case the boiler goes at Lyman, in case the
Mhm.
chillers go,
Okay,
so.
so what does that?
so,
do?
if I'm hearing right and check my math, that's only a reduction of 132.5.
Lindsay?
Right,
Mm,
yeah.
No, because we're not,
Because you're putting,
yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so if I put in a reduction of 132.5, I'm still at a 4.2.
So that brings it down to
But my numbers
4.2.
are wrong.
What, did you increase your building maintenance by 100?
So that brings it to 4.2. I mean, if you go, I mean, you have to think of not the perception, but the perception, what does it look like? If you go to go out for a budget and it's 4.56, or you go out for a budget increase that's 3 something, even if it's 3.9. I mean, it's kind of like when you go to the store and you pay $2.99 for an item. It seems like it's less money than $3, even though it's pretty close. So, you know, this isn't such a bad idea to move some of it up into the unanticipated, but we still have 4.2%.
And my numbers had me under 4, and that was personally my goal. I wanted to be under that 4,
Right.
anywhere from 389 to 3.92. I don't know how
Well,
feasible that is.
I think what might be helpful for Kim is if there's some sense of, is there's consensus about what you want this increase to be, whether it's as we proposed
Then she
it,
could figure it out.
or at 4.2 or 3.9 or whatever, I think she can come back with, this is what it would do to the capital line if we're saying that the entire change is coming out of there, and I like the way that Jay has phrased it. It's really not a cut to the current year's level. It's a reduction in what we've proposed in going up to
Right.
2%. It's still
Right.
an increase. Obviously, we
Right.
still support 2%, and maybe some of you do as well, but we understand that, you know, we've gotta be good
Certainly
stewards
the
and.
2% would be great, and I agree with you, getting our buildings up to where they need to be and preparing
Yeah.
for the future is extremely important. I agree with Jay on this as well. But at the end of the day, I'd like to see it somewhere around 3.5 myself.
Okay.
But, I mean, I have a couple questions on, some of the other expenditures, like, is our transportation contracts, are those all set in stone right now, or are those reoccurring contracts, or are they
We
contracts that?
bid that out a couple years ago, and
Yep.
we had a 3-year contract with a 2-year extension option. We're into year 3 now, and it was a 3% increase each year. So So it can rebid, or I can extend, we had one bidder last time and it was DACO.
And with the cost of fuel right now, if you go to bid, you're gonna just eat it.
And also, I mean, DACO has been so great to
Amazing.
us during COVID. I
During
mean,
COVID.
No, they've been great.
we're one of the few, I'm
So many
just saying,
districts.
we're one of the few districts that was able to provide transportation to all of their students. Is there anywhere else that you can see that we can cut? I
You
mean,
know, I showed Lindsay when she came in one day, I have this big binder and it's got tabs, colors, tabs everywhere. I went line by line by line with each administrator, with everyone, and embarrassed at some of the questions I had to ask. Do you really need 7 soccer balls? Can you do 5? So it takes big things to
Right,
move.
right.
And so, you know, I understand, the optics of getting it under a 4, and I don't disagree with that. My opinion on saving for the 2 was similar to you, Missy, but I think the only place you're gonna make any movement at all is salaries and capital.
So one of the
Salaries
things,
meaning, I'm sorry, salaries meaning
Staff.
staff reduction.
Or
lowering the
or
stat, or fund, or
how
I,
much-
I,
what
I was just
percentage
gonna
is
say
funded
with,
at?
I know before you said, I think last year was 95.5%.
90
Previously, you've used 96.5, I believe.
97.5.
We're 96.5 the year we're in
Okay.
now. We were 95 the year before.
So how are we looking for this current year right now?
So we're almost about break even at 96.5.
So I mean, even if you were to go down to, say, 97%,
Exactly.
that's still a savings of 250-ish.
It's a 225,000 for
Okay.
1 percentage point.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we wanted to go down 1 percentage point, it would be 225, or any portion thereof, and that
Yeah.
will move the needle significantly.
And-
So combination,
yeah.
I'm sorry,
No, go.
combination of that and maybe the,
Yeah.
capital will move it. The only, caveat I say about salary is because should we expend because of this vacancy factor? Maybe we don't have teachers going on maternity, maybe we have all our administrators stay, nobody leaves, no teachers leave. Then I'm gonna go over, and then I could say, we don't have enough money to pay people, we're gonna have to ask the towns for an appropriation, and that's not a
so
good
what is
thing.
this budget in, 97?
96
This
and a
is
half.
97 and
This
a
is
half.
97.5.
So there is.
And we're in what this year?
96.5.
So it's 1% difference.
Yes.
And there are some people out on maternity,
Oh, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know who, I
And-
don't know how many, but.
or they're going to be, I just know,
Yeah.
yeah. And, and how many people do we have retiring? Do we know?
I don't know the latest, Kevin,
Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I wanna say 3 or 4,
Yeah,
that's off
it's
the
So
top of
not
my head.
many, not a lot.
Not a lot.
So I know, and I'm not gonna point names, but like at least one of those I would say definitely has to be like filled, because that's the only person that teaches that, without saying names. But is it possible, like, are there openings or people that are retiring that it's not gonna be
An essential job function.
correct?
Yeah, so see, this takes us back to the retreat when we talked about making staffing reductions. I am not a fan of what you just described because it's very random and arbitrary. I think if we're gonna
And that's okay,
make
I'm just
staff
I'm just
reduction, no, I'm not,
yeah.
it's been done wherever I've been because it's seen as being like painless and it you know, no one loses their job and those things. But I feel like it's hard to budget for that and my overall point on this, what do you call it, salary factor, whatever the.
Vacancy.
It's only ever been 100% wherever I've been, but I would prefer if we're gonna reduce to 1% of the overall budget, that it all come out of capital, because if we're a little bit too conservative on the salaries, to Kim's point, that's gonna result in a surplus that we can apply to any number of things. But the opposite is not true. If we don't budget properly for salaries, then we have to go to the towns and ask for an allocation mid-year. And no disrespect to our towns, they were great, they were here, you're still here. Like, we don't wanna have to have that conversation with you and then be asked, well, then why did you budget at that level? And so I agree that 100% is probably way too conservative. And I've been in places where we've built up millions of dollars and been criticized for doing it that way. But, so I don't know what the number is. I would just say if we're debating between the two, I would go on the capital because they're both just budgeting strategies. I mean, we're gonna pay the salaries that we pay no matter what,
You have
and
to
if things break, we're gonna fix them, no matter what,
So, but, so say we don't save enough for the capital or whatever, and something breaks, where's the money come from?
We might have to go to an emergency bond referendum. We can't
Is that
borrow,
different than-
we can borrow a bank loan of up to $100,000, that's it.
And
Anything
so
larger than that.
If we didn't wanna go out to bond, or like, what if we can't pay our salary? That's not going out to bond, that's just going out to the town and saying,
Yes,
every person owes us,
yes,
so it's different.
yes.
we would
So-
prefer not to figure out how that works.
Yeah, right.
I'm just
Personally,
trying to
but-
understand.
Like, essentially,
Could we-
supplemental tax
Could
bill.
we, just, let me throw something out, could we at this point have Kim kind of do some figuring with the capital to see if she can get the percentage under 4?
So,
And just fiddle around with the numbers to see, you know, between Picket Lane and between the unanticipated building, and.
you're
see
talking
if you can do that.
gross or net budget, because gross budget, which was the 456, you need to reduce by $205,000 to get down to a straight 4. So how that plays out in the capital, we have to reduce 205 out of the capital, and now we'll be at a 4% gross budget. If you wanna get just under 4%, maybe it's 210. I have a little spreadsheet
Can we,
here.
210?
could we at that point drop down the turf, to 13,750 and do that over 2 years? Because that's not looking, we're not looking for.
We can, absolutely, I mean,
Yeah.
a
Not that it moves that
$210,000
much,
reduction is 3.99.
Yeah.
But your gross budget's 4.3, but your net budget, but the taxpayers vote on the gross budget.
So we're looking at, if we drop the Picket Lane from 582 to 350, that's 232,500, which is more than the 210. So, in 210, that gives us what, 22,000 that we could put into the unanticipated.
22.5.
Yeah, 22.5, yeah, to put into the unanticipated, which would make it 72.5,
72.5.
which is more than you've put in before, cause you've always just put in 50.
Well, I've been up to 80, but we were
Up to
backing
80.
it back
Yeah,
down,
yeah.
So
So
then
what if-
you're looking at the brick, work at strong is at 80,
Right.
unanticipated maintenance 72.5, turf 27.5, or we could move that, and paving 350,000.
Right.
And then
Or-
what's the increase?
Or we could drop the paving to
overall?
300, and so we could put a little
Which is
more
at
into the
3.99.
unanticipated and still get 3%.
3.9 out of the budget.
You know what I'm saying? Not 3%, but under 4. So we could possibly drop the paving to 300, or even 325, and so that we could put enough in the unanticipated so that it's 100,000 total, which is double
That's
what's
what
in
you
there
were
now.
suggesting.
Yeah, which is double what's in there now.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
And what does that do?
So unanticipated would be 100,
Yep,
and what was the other, where was that coming from, the turf?
the 3, oh, you're taking the turf?
Oh,
No.
I
No,
thought we
we're
were gonna
saying
leave
that
the turf
paving
at.
would be 325.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Paving at
sorry, I thought you said,
325,
yeah.
okay. Okay, and then add that 25 up to unanticipated maintenance,
Yeah.
Yep.
so that'd be
100.
97.5.
Oh, it's 97, it still doesn't hit 100.
No, I said the 72.5 there.
Still doesn't
But
hit
is
100.
everyone
I'll
comfortable
need a
with the
couple minutes
3.9?
What was
Well,
that?
let's see, what did you come up with a percentage for that, with that one?
So I,
She's so good.
well, not yet.
Okay.
Paving is at 325,
Yep,
turf is at 27.5,
13,750.
okay, 13,750. How much is maintenance unanticipated?
100.
100.
total 100, yep.
Okay, so that saves us 221,250 from what we had. And that brings us to a 3.96.
And then
Can I
what-
ask what the increase for the capital would be at that point? Cause I feel like we are
That
coming
would
down
be
on
my
numbers,
next-
but I'm
That's my next question.
Yeah,
I don't know
so
what's
wanna be at
1%
1.1.
is 380, so half of that would be 190. So we're actually over, we're at 221. Let me see if I can do this mathematically here.
That's amazing. I need that brain.
Yes.
He also had the spreadsheet.
She lost
I
me.
have.
Calculator, figuring
She
out
lost
what
me
do we
at 100.
divide you to, and trying to figure it out.
Still
what else
amazing.
is
Just her brain,
Oh,
and this is her
God.
value.
You need one of those little slide things, except I never knew how to use them.
Tells me it's 67%, so clearly I did something wrong, so. I'll need a minute to do that.
Oh, sure.
Just
Do
to
you want
figure
us
out
to
what
take
that
like a
percentage is.
5-minute break, and we'll grab some cheese and crackers
That
and
would be
something?
great, and then
Can I
I'll
ask
be
you
able
a
to
quick question
capital.
How much
before we break
was,
this? I got a
how
quick
much were
question.
you guys saying for
Are
paving?
grants figured
thought
into
you
all
used
this,
it.
obviously?
We're reducing
Okay.
paving.
I was told about 3 grants, just wanna know whether or not we're dealing with them or not.
Okay.
225.
The Dalio
And then
Foundation?
moving up.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I-
Just
did-
done
that
it,
was
and
I
you're
got
ten,
them
taking-
wasn't
moving up
that
already.
and
The
you're
which
taking
one?
The Dalio?
Dalio
turf out.
Foundation?
No, turf was
One of those, but it was
13
something that we
No,
just
13,
didn't.
13.
It's in
So the
applied
turf
tech.
was cut in half.
Wasn't
I think
that all
applicable to us,
crumbled
if I
anyway, it was a
recall.
political thing.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
I don't think we need to get
during
into like
COVID.
telecom tech. Okay, how about the Connecticut Rise Network? Question of
Connecticut Rise?
misappropriation.
Rise.
Yep.
I was
Rise.
asking about that.
Rise.
Rise. What kind of grant is that?
I'm just going off of what
I'll
somebody
write it down, I don't know about that.
And, the last one was, Edutopia.
There's plenty of cheese and crackers over
Yeah.
there.
I don't know
So
anything about those,
we'll
I will
take-
look
And
them
the reason
up.
why I mention them is
These ones are done,
because,
No,
again,
this is
I work in
fresh
Meriden,
from the grocery store.
very friendly with the president of the, Board of
Oh, that's what he was
Engineers.
doing here?
You didn't hear
And
it
those are the 3
You can scrape
that they've
it off
applied
your
for,
back.
and they get millions of dollars from them.
Logan put it on top
Right,
of my
I
car instead of
will-
on top of
yep.
the seat.
I'll
So those
look them
are
up,
3
I
that they
also
do, and if
Fully
you're telling me
fully
that the
down my
Dalio
hood.
one is not a good one, I don't know.
It's still in
I
there.
haven't researched them, those are the 3 that they use, and they get a significant amount
spelling
of
on that
money.
one?
Thank-
Just,
thanks
So
for
we're
that.
gonna take about a 5-10 minute break, okay?
Foundation.
Just So I guess the question that was out on the table was, what is the, how much are we funding the, capital with
So,
these changes?
yep, that turns out to be 1.35%.
Okay, so it's still going up. So 1.35% for the capital. We have, 3.96
Gross.
for the budget,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
We've actually done a couple of good things, is we've actually funded the unanticipated building fund more than you have in the past, cause you said you went up to 80, we're up to 100.
Yep.
So, you know, that kinda gives us that little cushion there if something does happen at Lyman, because we're kind of stagnant, we don't have the funds, any additional funds, if something happens at Lyman or any of the schools. We haven't touched the salary funding.
Did you decrease the turf?
Yes, 213,750.
And when was the full amount supposed to be by?
This was our last, installment of it.
Okay.
There's
I
already,
think
what,
that
450?
I'm not worried about cutting it in half, I think we're okay with that.
I'm not gonna eat this year.
No, it's not gonna need it this year, so we're okay with that.
Okay.
Any other thoughts?
And that kept the brick at the same,
Yeah, 80,000?
That
80,000
kept-
for the brick?
The brick,
Oh,
yes.
yeah,
I'm
Yep.
yeah,
losing
we
my
didn't
voice.
touch that.
Yep, that stayed the same.
Is the turf replacement in, or is it out?
13,750.
Oh, it's 13, okay.
It's half.
So how do you feel about it, Kim? Because this, now we're pulling apart your budget.
So, it's my job to tell you what I think the district needs,
Yeah.
right? And so I think I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't suggest a 2%, because that's what I think you need. But, having said that, I also understand the other side, and I'm okay with this. The only caveat, again, because I always have caveats, is that if the paving is done at the full amount, not saying it is, there's alternate methods, probably 3 different ones that we can look at. But if we did go to anything in the $1 million range, then this is not saving enough. So it'll be a problem for a future day. But there are alternate ways to get there, I guess, in different kind of methods and stuff, but that's all for the building committee to vet.
And I think, I feel comfortable lowering that amount for the paving because we've only gotten one, suggested way to improve the road, and we're not sure if there are other ways that might cost less as well, you know, like the one I presented to you, and they have to be vetted, so.
The
You know.
paving by Strong, the EPA, that's still a go. And that doesn't cost the district anything, and that's gonna happen in June or July, probably June this year.
And that's going from Main Street all the way to the bridge, right?
Main Street to Allenbrook Culver.
Okay, yeah.
Is it gonna wait
Can
until
that
school gets
savings-
out?
Yes, after school gets out.
Okay.
Can that savings for Pickett also be, that can also be put in for next year? 'Cause we're not doing that until July of 2023, right?
We wanted to pay, in 23, so that's only a year from now. So you can do another chunk of change next year, which we may have a better direction as to how it's gonna
If we,
be
yeah, and if
fixed.
we fund it at the 2%
And
next
that may
year.
be your full 2% that you decide to throw there, or it may not be, depending on what the decision is at the building committee and the board level to how to fix it.
Okay.
Now, how are they repairing the road up to Allenbrook? What are they going from the bottom up, or are they paving
up.
over the top,
Bottom up.
bottom up?
There's a lot of drainage there, there's, things that are called loops, I don't know, Jimmy knows, but these are a lot of state things that if, which is sort of why Jimmy picked that area, because the EPA will take care of all the state applications and the permits and a bunch of stuff, and it's costing us zero. He said EPA is going above and beyond for us in that section, but they're building it from the bottom up solid. So any kind of, SAMI system or anything would take effect at Allenbrook on.
Okay.
The original proposal in the Superfund project was to give us 2 inches of cover over the entire road from all of Pickett Lane, but that was determined to be not worth the while, because it would just break again. So instead, they used that money to do from Superfund money from Main Street to the Brook,
Well,
I still feel like
Okay,
people
we'll
are
look into that.
obsessing about Picket Lane. I do.
Pardon?
People are fixated on Picket Lane, that they see it there. And I mean, every year it's something that people get fixated on. but
Well, you have the other people that we have calling us complaining that their cars got damaged on Picket Lane, that we have to pay them for, that it's dangerous, you know, so we're getting both sides. We get the people who say, don't do it, and when we get the people that say, it's a shameful, why are you not fixing this road? So we get both.
And that's the flip side, because if you do have damage there, we are culpable, I mean, we are responsible for that, so I mean, it
And
has
we've
to
had a
be fixed.
couple.
I'd
but-
love to see down by where that parking lot is, between where we have the park and football, to put, not like one of the ones that like breaks your suspension every time you go over it, but a graduated,
Speed bump?
speed bump.
The speed humps like they have in
Speed
Meriden
hump, there you
over
go.
by, the new section.
By the railroad.
Cause we
Yeah.
have so much
Mhm.
traffic, between Falcons and cheerleaders and football, and then you've got siblings going over to that park, and like, I can't tell you how many times our family or other family at football have literally grabbed a child from the back, running across the street from a car with someone flying up that road.
I think it's a great idea.
And that's
not-
what the
Yeah.
condition is.
Yeah,
Fix it up.
Well, you're adding money to the thing
I'm
is the
sorry,
lights-
now we're adding things.
Yeah.
No, it's not like it's
So-
that you're roughly adding.
So the question on the table is, if we wanna get home,
Yeah.
what are we thinking about where we are now with the changes that we've made? Do we need to go over them again?
And it's at what, 3.9?
3.96.
3.96 is the budget, 1.35% is the funding on the capital. We cut the turf replacement down to 13,750. We increased the unanticipated building equipment we doubled it to 100,000. We cut the Picket Lane paving to 325, and the brick replacement is staying at 80,000.
So what is that total for the capital?
518,750.
518,750.
As opposed to the 740 that I had originally had in there. That's a 221,250 reduction.
so can I just ask if, it sounds to me like people wanna see us under 4%, that's
Mhm.
kind of the vibe I'm getting. So, my question to Kim and Doug is, if we asked you to decrease it, would you take it from capital, or would you take it from somewhere else?
Did you increase it further?
No,
Oh,
No, even to
down
get
here.
where we get.
to get
no,
where you are.
I would take it from cap, I think I've already said that.
I just wanna,
yeah,
you said it to
yes.
me privately,
Yes,
but I
yes,
just
yes.
wanna
Yes,
put
I
it
thought
on
I
the
said that
record.
publicly too,
Maybe you
especially
did,
I was
but-
talking about salaries and the different, yeah, I
You did.
think, it's obviously not what we proposed, but I think it's the most obvious place, and I keep going back to Jay's earlier point, I mean, it's still an increase. It still shows the board is committed to capital. We had hoped to get all the way to 2% in 1 year, but we understand if we can't do that, and we respect and honor that. I mean, I don't wanna speak for Kim,
No, I
but-
agree. I often say, my phrase is, that's a problem for future me, so it's a problem for next year me.
I like that.
But next year, we might have some positives.
Who knows?
We might have some
Who knows?
positives. Keep our fingers crossed. Some other changes.
I just, my last pitch, I still think bonding of the road is appropriate. Allowing us to use this money for whatever breaks. It wouldn't, we don't have to do it this year, we could bond next year, and for the summer construction of 2023. And, it would it would keep our debt service pretty level. One of the things that we try to do is have a long-term debt plan of around $1 million a year, a little more than that. And after the next year, it drops by a couple $100,000, and then it goes down to $40,000 or $50,000. So there's a lot of capacity in our debt, and again, it will do the same thing as our budget. If we go down and limit our debt service to very little, the next time we borrow, it's gonna be increased. So maintaining a separate, a constant debt service level by adding bonding here and there keeps us at that level, so we don't see a big loss like we hear in the capital. So my sense is that if you do this, we still have a year to issue a bond to build a road if we find that that's the best solution. And it will only impact the budget the following year for about $150,000 a year. So I think there's options. My sense is that, most of the Durham is afraid of bonding. I've lived in the other agencies where bonding was our method for moving forward, and it's been the method that they require of schools. Because we can't save this much money, it's anticipated that you'll be borrowing it, where we can, raise this level. So my sense is that cutting this is, I think we need to get a capital reserve at a very high level, the highest we can maintain it at. Once we get there, you can maintain it, because people won't see it as an increase in the budget, it'll be constant. But the same thing is gonna happen in debt if we don't issue for more bonding, and if we would have done that if they passed the Lyman bonding, and so I think it has to be sold, that this is a way to do this. We get a better road, we can put speed bumps in it, we can put traffic calming in it, we could put whatever we need to do in it, and still run it. So my sense is, I think it's good to get the budget down under 4. I think it'll make, the towns realize that we did cut it, but on the other hand, I still think there's an option for the roadway that, from my sense, is a better option in the future.
And to expand on your
and-
comment.
And Kim disagrees with me, but.
You're right, but but if you do end up bonding and we don't spend this money we have in paving, then you just redirect it somewhere else. It can't go
Yeah,
back to the
right.
general fund, but it
No.
can go to another savings project.
It can go to put
The pump house.
the pump house that we
Yep.
need, there's a lot of other things that are out there that are ready, that need repair.
But I almost see an inevitable need to bond very soon.
Yeah, we need to bond something soon.
Yeah, I think that so much that's been said is how unhappy people are with Pickett. I would like to see Pickett in the budget, that we are making an effort to make sure that we are saving for it to be done. But I do see where Bob's coming from, so I think we could keep it.
Yeah, I think it's good to keep the name.
Yeah, keep the name.
Yeah, I think it's good to keep people understand that Pickett Lane is good, and we're working on it.
Right.
And if we have to change, we
Right.
change.
But we could go and bond for it. I think it's something that I personally would like to wait on and see how the budget goes. And if it doesn't go, maybe it's a way we can reduce it in order to go that direction. But I think what we have here is, it is an increase. It does hit Middlefield harder. It hits everybody harder, but every town's getting hit hard. So I'd like to stay where we are, but.
Any other thoughts? No? All right. So now that kind of takes us down to,
That's your student achievement
getting
agenda.
the wrong one. The possible vote on the proposed budget, and, I thought Rebecca would be coming so we could kind of, get her in, up to.
Want me to call Maura?
Yeah, Maura has been listening in, and she said if we were gonna vote, that she would like to vote, so, we're gonna
She
give
might
her
have
a
some
call.
questions before we do that. Do we wanna?
Pardon?
wanna
Oh,
call?
if she has
Yeah,
any
I need her
questions?
number though.
Oh, wait a minute, I just got something from, let me give you Maura's number, hold on, wait a minute.
Don't say it out loud.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, just.
I have it, if
Yeah.
you wanna
You have
look at
it?
something else, and then I can
Well, I
give
got
it
it,
to
I
her.
got a note from, okay, it's 203.
I read it.
That's right.
She's probably looking at it now.
No, we can't go. Okay, let me hear what Rebecca said. I think Rebecca said she was gonna be here by 7:30, but I think we'll be
There's a
done.
reason why I have 2 phones for work, because they can have the Wyman
Let me
work.
text her.
Call it too.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
She's probably watching it on her phone.
He's on the phone, probably.
She's trying to call.
When do contracts open up?
I mean, she said she,
For teachers?
23.
Next year.
she's on this one.
We have nurses this year, and we have wage reopener for custodians and food service. And then teachers. I think administrators, well, no, administrators just did it years ago.
Should we tell her to call?
I did.
say we could tell her live.
And these are.
Rebecca said she's on her way, she'll be here by 7:30. I don't know if we wanna wait, till she gets here, we're gonna have more on the line. Or we can just go ahead and, I texted her and told her we were getting ready to vote. I know she's on her way, so I'll just kinda leave that up to you, if you guys wanna wait, hang around a little longer. But that means that if we vote on it tonight, we don't have to meet next week.
Correct.
So, 15 minutes or.
Do you wanna talk about while you're waiting, about the hearing next week?
Do we need
On the
a
April
vote?
6th?
Because then you still have
Hey,
a
Maura.
public
Hi,
hearing.
guys. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks so much,
Yeah,
guys.
we're in there, well, it depends on how.
Did you have any questions, Maura?
No, you guys
I'm
did a
sure I
great
can
job.
do
I
it.
was listening in for the whole 2 hours here, and I very thoroughly covered. Thank you.
Okay, all right, she's okay with it.
So you'll need the number, if you're gonna make a motion. So
Yeah.
the total budget proposed is $38,489,206,
And the percentage again?
3.96.
Can I, ask a clarifying question before we do this? Are we voting to send it to referendum?
Yes.
Okay, just,
You're voting to, propose this at the public hearing. After the public hearing, you send it to referendum.
send it to
Then it's the
referendum.
lockout period.
okay.
Yeah, so right now, the vote would be to send the budget
Just to approve
of this
the
amount, to
budget
approve the
as the
budget
board
amount to
approved
send to
budget.
the, right, what did you wanna say about public hearing?
No, while we're waiting for more, I just think we ought to talk about the hearing, because we can't have it in
Rebecca's
the
coming,
auditorium.
I think we should wait for her to
Yeah,
get here.
we're actually gonna be having the hearing, here in the library, because the auditorium, they have a play that they're practicing for.
It's their
so-
last dress rehearsal.
dress rehearsal, so, it will be here instead of in the auditorium. And, I believe, here's my thing here.
That's
your
mine.
phone?
Yeah, that's Maura. Hi, Maura.
Oh, hi, Maura. Again, I think it's April 4th, no.
6th.
It's April 6th, and I believe our meeting starts at 7:30, we have about a half an hour, and then we go to the public hearing at 8 o'clock. I have library here, oh yeah, I have library, that's right.
Are we still having ERC that day?
Pardon?
Are we still having ERC that day?
No, I think we canceled it.
We'd recommend canceling it, but that's up to you all.
It's all.
I don't know, we were looking at ERC on
Yeah.
April 6th, but I think with the
If
hearing.
you could tell us
that
these
should
things
hold up.
today, Meg would be very happy, because then she knows what notices to put out or not, cancel next
We'll
week.
talk right after the meeting.
Yeah, okay, we'll talk about it after the meeting for sure. I was just wondering if one of the questions, emails we got had to do with the access to Brewster, to the playground and the school. And I don't know if that fits in with our budget discussion, or if we should wait until our
So you're talking
next
about
meeting.
the ramp?
Yeah.
The ramp
Yeah.
is actually in this year's budget, we have money for it.
Okay.
We just couldn't do the work until the asphalt plants open back up after the winter. So
Okay.
it's gonna be scheduled as soon as we can get asphalt and get that fixed.
So the bid and all that was approved in the fall?
So it was only, it's not a lot of money, so
Yeah.
it didn't get bid out.
Oh, it didn't, okay.
No.
So, but that was, the contractor was picked and all set starting in the fall, it was just due to the winter? Okay.
So, are you telling me by waiting that we're waiting for Rebecca, or are we gonna just go ahead with the vote?
We know where she is.
I think if she's on her way here, we ought to wait.
She's
you
on her
know,
way
I think,
here, yeah. Um,
Or we get her on the phone.
all right, let me try that. That's a thought,
Has she been following, or we have to get her up to speed?
but she hasn't been following the whole meeting.
So
Sure,
does she
it's
even
called-
have,
Cliff Note version.
But
Do we need her
now.
here?
do we need her, is the question?
Not technically,
I
it's more.
thought she had to be following so they could vote, I thought that's what I read somewhere.
So we're just voting to send it to public hearing, we're not
Right.
voting to send it to referendum.
Right, I think we just
Right.
moved that as well.
Yeah, I think we could, if everyone's okay to vote to send it to a public hearing without her, then we wouldn't.
Let me see if she answers.
Because even if she answers, we'd have to really get her up to speed.
I know, we have to get her up to speed.
It'll take a long time.
It's just obviously you want.
You guys are so patient, thank you. She's probably not gonna answer. Okay, she's not answering. I think we'll just go ahead, and I know she's on her way, but we'll go ahead and, so we have a motion, to, how do we say that, to accept the no,
To approve
approve
the
the-
board proposed budget.
to approve the board proposed budget for the 2022-2023 school year in the amount of $38,489,206. Okay, that's the vote.
Second?
So I need somebody to make it.
Oh, so moved.
Lindsay made and seconded
Second.
by Jay. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
We have to do individual.
Because we have more
Yeah.
on the phone, I think we're gonna have to do it, one at a time, so we'll start with,
Sorry, guys.
Okay.
so, we'll
Yes.
start with Amanda. Amanda, yes?
Yes.
Jay, yes?
Nay.
Missy, yay, nay?
Yes.
Bob is a yes?
Lindsay, yes?
Lucy, yes? Jamie?
Yes?
Yes? John?
Yes.
And Maura?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, so the vote has passed. Okay. We're
Yes.
done? I think we're done. So I need a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks,
Thank
Maura.
you so
Bye,
much.
Maura.
Thank you. Thank you, Maura.
Thanks for